Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Closet Conversations. In the previous videos, we talked about HIV, about getting tested, but today we're going to talk about getting on treatment and the importance of staying on treatment to stay healthy. So we have some guest speakers, so if you can go ahead and introduce yourself, just tell us a little bit about you, whoever wants to start.
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Carlos. I have been living with HIV for 8 or 9 years, since about 2009, 2010.
Hi everybody, I'm Blossom C. Brown. I'm an actress, producer, HIV activist. I've been living with HIV for almost 15 years now. Originally from Mississippi, got my degree in public health education.
So HIV Treatment Works is actually a current campaign from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And this campaign, the purpose is to really encourage folks who are currently living with HIV, who either just found out or who have been living with HIV for a while, and maybe having a hard time getting on treatment and staying healthy for many reasons. And so we want to have a conversation about what that looks like for some folks in order to encourage others to get on treatment and stay healthy. So how about let's go back from the very beginning. How were you diagnosed? Can you tell us a little about the story about that?
So, believe it or not, I had just turned 17 years old and I was in high school. I was a junior in high school and there was this blood drive. And I was really curious to know what my blood type was because there was a shortage of donors in the area. And I kind of thought I had a rare blood type, but I didn't. So what ended up happening was I ended up getting tested. And before then, I was feeling like really weak, and I was really having these spells of shortness of breath, waking up in the middle of the night, couldn't catch my breath, and all these different things that were happening to me, but I didn't know what they were. And so, me just donating blood was just one of those spare of the moment kind of things. And I'll never forget, I was at home, I think I was in the bathroom, like looking in the mirror, doing something, and the phone rang, and my mom answered the phone, and it was the Department of Health. And they were wanting to speak to me, and my mom was trying to figure out what do you want, you know what I mean? But in Mississippi, when you turn 17, you're technically an adult and be able to access your own medical records. So they couldn't tell my mother, and when they told me, they were just
confidential information.
Yeah, it was confidential.
Right.
And so when I got that phone call, they were saying that I needed to come in, and I'm just like, for what? And they were just like that my blood work came back positive for HIV. But the lady was so kind. She was just like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have it. We just need you to come in to confirm and make sure, whatnot, And by the way, your blood type is a B positive. So make sure you be positive in your way of thinking and all this other stuff. So I was like, okay, fine. And, when me and my mom went down there, it did turn out that I had HIV. They had tested my blood 6 times with 6 different tests, and it was true. After that, I took 2 years off before I went to college, and all through college, I didn't talk about my HIV status unless you were dating me or we were in an intimate, like we were hooking up or whatever you want to call it.
Doing adult things.
Doing very adult things. But, yeah, I never really talked about it, and for 12 years, I was like that. Literally for 12 years. Up until about 3 years ago, the Greater Than AIDS campaign came out, and they were looking for trans women to talk about living with HIV and getting on PrEP. And so somebody brought the opportunity to me, and I was just like, I don't know. But by then I had already been on Ellen, I had already done Caitlyn, so people knew who I was. Mm-hmm. But I was just like, I don't know.
We're next to a superstar.
I don't know. I was just like, I don't know. But then somebody else circled around with the opportunity, so I was like, okay, let's do it. I think out of like 40, 50, or maybe 150 or whatever people, I was one of those girls that was selected, along with other trans women. And we ended up having this conversation about living with HIV as far as like dating, staying healthy, staying on the medication, right. And those who are negative talking about PrEP and what that looks like. So that was really the place where I opened up about my HIV diagnosis, and it's been relieving for me to even be a voice in it, to be honest with you. I wasn't really expecting that, but it's really good. It's very good that we really empower our voices to other people who don't know what to do in certain situations like ours. So I'm very grateful I get to do that now.
Yeah, cool, awesome.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
What about you, Carlos?
Yeah.
I graduated high school in May of 2008. And then I was still like in the closet my entire high school life. And then I didn't really.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
I'm like, right?
knew?
The closet of what? So I finally came out in January of 2009, and had my first sexual experience with another guy in January 2009. And then November 2009 is when I know that I seroconverted. So it had been less than a year, right? So for my first sexual experience in January of 2009, I had my first HIV test, I think in March of 2009. And I still have the one and only test that has a stamp that says negative on it. My very first HIV test was because I think someone was like, well, now that you need to get an HIV test, you're gonna be sexually active. And I was like, okay, so I had my first one. And then the second HIV test that I got was after I was having symptoms. So then I had all these symptoms of like, the flu. So I had the flu, I had strep throat, I had hives all over my body, and I had like night sweats and terrible nightmares or hallucinations, because at that point my fever and flu were very high. So I went to the urgent care, and they were just like, oh, you must have changed your fabric softener, your soap, that's why you have the hives, you're sweating at night because you're breaking your fever, you've tested positive for strep throat. So they just had like answers for all of these things that were going wrong, and they never thought to test me for HIV. And at this point I was like 19 years old still, and I had gone to do all this stuff by myself. And the day that I went to, after all urgent care stuff, I got better, but I still had all these body hives, and I was like, what's going on? And so someone was like, you should probably go get checked again for HIV. And I was like, okay. So I went by myself again, and then it was a completely different process than the first time, because I only have one other time to compare it to, but I went to the same place, and the first time it was very like, Carlos, here's your result. The second time it was like, Carlos, and then it was like the nurse with a folder, and then it was like, can you come back? Because we have to go to this room and talk about some stuff. So we went back into the room. I was like, this is different. And we sat at a room it was pretty small. It was just like a table and us on each side. And the nurse was like, what do you know about HIV? And I was like, I don't really know much, to be honest. Just I know that it can't be cured. And she was like, well, you're right. And I just want to let you know your test came back positive. And at that moment, it like everything just sort of went clear and blank, and like I didn't really hear anything after that. But I did call my mom. My mom was the first person that I called, and so she came to my rescue. That's from that moment on, like the rest of the journey, up from then until today has just been everything as a result of that day. So all in all, in the experience for what it is, I think that I'm pretty fortunate that it was like a good, it was a good experience. I wasn't too self-destructive, and I was able to have a parent there. So yeah. Those are all really like, not all situations go down like that. Some people don't have their parents. Some people,
don't have the same support.
Yes, so I'm very, very fortunate that that's how it happened.
Yeah, wow. Everyone has a very unique story in regards to it, because both of you have similarities. You guys were both young. Still young. And you found out through like health department or somehow like that. How long after you guys found out about your HIV status did you guys get on treatment?
Well, for me, it did take me a while. I know that now it's recommended that like once you're diagnosed that you should start treatment like right away.
Yeah.
But for me, when we started, and I got, we did like a resistance test. So they made sure that I wasn't resistant to any medication before I started one. And then, like I said, at that point there was only a tripla that was a 1 a day pill, and since I was so young, I felt like if I did like a cocktail, I'd mess it up for myself, like by missing if I had to take a morning and then a night, that I would mess up. I wasn't confident, and so that's why I didn't start medication for 4 months and after, because I really wanted to make sure that I was dedicated to the decision of taking meds, and like to know that I had to take it every day as prescribed. And I was like really fearful of resistance, and so I was really paranoid about that. So I waited a while to start my medication, and then I started it around my birthday, so it was like in June. So I think that was like, oh, this was like a little gift to myself. I'll start, taking the medication and seeing how it works. Yeah, so it was about 4 months after.
Yeah, for me, right away. I had a T cell count of 64, I think, by the time I found out. And I was really, really sickly. Like, I had severe anemia. Like, I just couldn't sleep. Like, there was just a lot of different things going on. For me, it was more of a trial and error kind of thing when it came to finding the right two medications for me. The first one I think I took was Sativa, and I was resistant to that drug, like flat out. Something with my genotype. Oh, sorry.
She didn't like that drug either.
Yeah, something with my genotype was just automatically resistant to it, and it was nothing that I could have done or whatever. It's just how my DNA was made up, and so they ended up switching the combination, and that combination worked for about 7 or 8 years. And then eventually the medication just stopped working on its own. And so then I had to switch me to something else. And then when I moved out here to LA, that's when I really got on the once a day regimen, which is so much better. Because I was at a point where I had to take, when I was taking 2 different medications, I had to take it in the morning and at night before bed too. And sometimes it was really hard for me to do that. So I'm just glad that the medication has really, we've gotten down to the point where we're only able to take it once a day, and it's really good that when you're finding out about your diagnosis that you are getting started with it right away.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like for some people it's easy to kind of get on it real quick, and for some people it's not. But for people out there, especially like, I guess getting on it quickly or not doesn't make you like a bad or unhealthy person or not. I think what you say, sometimes it takes time for people to. I think maybe that's the first step.
It's like wrap your head around the whole idea, and I think back then too as well, or even like still today, people are like taking my medication every day is what triggers me, and then what reminds me that I have HIV, and so I think I had that idea probably when I was first diagnosed. I was like, if I take this medication, I really have HIV, and like this is solidify, like I have HIV, like so I think that played a little bit of a part in my delayed treatment response too, but other things as well. So like I had the support from my mom, but I was still living at home. I had like step parents, I had the rest of my family because we're like pretty small and tight. So like another part of like not wanting to start medication is like insurance. So like I was all worried about like insurance and being on my parents' insurance, getting medications delivered at home, like having to hide stuff from my stepfather who was like very conservative, and from the rest of my family. And then so like my mom also had to keep a lot of secrets for me. She had to lie to my stepdad a lot, she lied to my grandparents a lot, she lied to so I think it's, if we back out, that's all stigma. So stigma is the base of why I probably delayed my medication a little bit longer.
And that's probably the reason why for a lot of people it's you know, why they decide to delay, you know, getting on medication because of stigma. It's more about other people, like how, you know, they're gonna think things rather than us. I mean, in a way, probably the person have to deal with that too, right? But that's probably the first step. So, in regards to your treatments and just like treatment staying healthy, what has been some like barriers, but also some support that has allowed you to stay on treatment or preventing you from being on treatment?
You kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. Insurance, dealing with Ryan Watt, and really keeping up with the process of like when you have to renew your stuff, and you know when you do renew your stuff, does the pharmacy have the medication? You know if there's a wait for it. It's funny. I had the opportunity to go to the International AIDS Conference about 2-3 years ago in Durban, South Africa, and I was in a situation like that. It was time for me to pick up my prescription, but they didn't have my medication, and then there was something wrong with my Ryan White, and so for a whole entire week while I was in Durban, South Africa, I had no medication. And ironically, my doctor was there at the conference as well too. And when we were able to come back to the States, you know, went to go see him, make sure I was still okay, and then get back on my medication. But that could be really difficult, and it really does depend on your socioeconomic status. You know what I mean? Not everybody has access to health care.
Or quality
of health care, exactly. And we have to keep it real about conversations like that.
Yeah.
And let people know that, hey, it does still exist. I will say, living here in California, coming from Mississippi, we live in a bubble here in California. We really do, compared to other places in the United States. Even though those issues still
exist. You mean like here, we're more privileged here?
We are. I think in healthcare we are very much more privileged here, because coming from the South, where a lot of those health disparities are, where the highest rates of HIV are in the Deep South, Louisiana being the state with the most, we are very lucky.
Even Atlanta, which is where CDC is.
Yeah, absolutely.
What barriers have you encountered?
Insurance is almost one of the main, insurance, and then like pharmacy, just the health system in general is probably one of the biggest ones.
The system.
Yeah, the system. I've definitely, cause the provider's office that I'm at has a pharmacy there on site, but I also get mail order, so it gets really confusing. But there have been times where my insurance has lapsed, whether I've there's so many cracks that you can fall into.
Right.
So whether I've like had a job with private insurance, lost the job, and then had to go to Ryan White in ADAP, and then obtaining another job, and then getting other private insurance.
And then wait for those benefits to kick in.
Yes, and then waiting 4 months for those benefits to kick in. And then so all that is going on, and then all this stuff is going on with your insurance, and things overlap or they don't. And I've had times where I'm like, okay, I know I only have this much medication left. I didn't receive one in the mail. When I remember when I lost my job last year, I had Anthem, Blue Shield, or Cross, whatever. They didn't. I don't know, but I got my meds through pharmacy mail order, and when I lost my health insurance, they just stopped sending it to me without calling me and being like, "Do you have another insurance that we can put on file so that we can send this out?" Like they just totally just like, since we have no payment type, we're not even gonna contact the patient. So that's like step mess up number one. And like my experience is that a lot of these places, whether it's the pharmacy or the insurance company or the provider's office, that a lot of times people don't want to go like that little extra step just to be like, okay, you're coming to pick up your medication, let me make sure you run your insurance so that it's good to go when you get here. So I've had situations where I'm like, okay, I have 3 pills left and my doctor's appointment is on the 3rd day, so I'm gonna call, get everything set up and all good to go. The nurses are like, yes, you're gonna leave your doctor's appointment with medication, do not worry, you have nothing to worry about. So you get there and you have your doctor appointment, and then you're leaving and they're like, oh, I don't know who you talked to yesterday, but we can't give you. And then so I'm just like, no. And that's where like being a self-advocate like comes into play. And I'm like not the proudest to say, but then I also am at the same time to say that like those 3 places, the provider's office, insurance office, and
the pharmacy,
probably all have thought at one point that I was a really big bitch. But
you have to be.
If I hadn't, then like, how am I just not gonna have a pill for the next day? And you're okay with just being like, oh, well, it'll get to you in 2 days. Like,
yeah.
Some people don't.
Yeah.
They never understand the urgency of the situation, but you always have to make it seem like it is a life or death situation, and that's how you have to make it come across. You always just have to advocate for yourself.
What has helped you stay with your regimen and your treatment, and what's helped you, be to this point?
You may want to go.
I mean, you mentioned
I'm having a thing
you
about
mentioned,
it.
for example, the pill holder, right?
So there's like many different ways to be innovative. So I did start out with like the pill holder, the weekly pill box. I would do some apps on my phone. So I had like some apps from the CDC, even just the alarm clock on my phone. I would set and just put like some cute emojis. And then I think the biggest help for me right now is just I take my meds on social media, and so that helps me be accountable and helps me have other people hold me accountable. And also the rest of my health. So since medications are tied to labs and labs are tied to my doctor appointment, it just keeps me all in like good all around health.
Right. What about you?
Yeah.
What's supporting you?
Number one, discipline. Disciplining myself to be willing to take the medication. Using exactly those tools that you just said to be able to do so. I kind of have my mom always nagging on me, like, did you take your medicine, blah, 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 blah. Yes, but it starts from yourself. You have to be willing to, if you want to live, if you want that life that you want, that you truly want, then you're going to discipline yourself, that you can have. You're going to truly discipline yourself to take your medication. I used to have the habit of just forgetting to take it sometimes. Like, I would go X amount of days without taking it only because I've forgotten. And so, my doctor used to get on me about that. And so, like, let's start using these tools to make sure that you're taking your medication and how important it is for you to take it every single day and what it could potentially do to your body. Because you're doing all this work, this great work to your body, but then when you're not taking your medication, it's like you're doing it for nothing. And so, making sure that you're just really adherent. Adherence is probably one of the biggest words that I like to use, because you have to be adherent to the medication.
Yeah.
If you want to live with HIV, you can live a normal, healthy life.
Yeah.
Like, it's not over. It's not the end of the world. We don't live in the 80s anymore where that was a different case. So.
And it may feel like it's the end of the world, but it doesn't have to be.
Exactly.
Right? So that's great. Well, do you guys have any advice or any suggestions for anyone who maybe has been recently diagnosed or who's having a hard time staying on treatment?
Well, I think that, like I had just mentioned, I think that getting on treatment is going to just be your big entryway into so many other things, services, mental health services, other healthcare services. You're just going to keep a close eye and watch on everything else that's going on in your body, and just from being on medication and staying into care, you'll have a doctor by your side, and you'll be in good hands. And so I think that starting medication is probably the best decision that anyone living with HIV can make for themselves.
Take your time. I think you have to process, first of all, being newly diagnosed and understanding that it's okay to move slower for you to understand and kind of accept what's going on with you. That's something that I had to do. It took a lot of setbacks. It took having to change my whole way of thinking and my whole attitude to make sure that I'm adherent to the medication, and really surrounding yourself with positive people. You know what I mean? Having that doctor that will stay on you about it, and having family and friends that support you. And if you don't have that support around you, then you need to change your circle, because in the long run, those people are not going to be there for you, especially dealing with this. And so, making sure that you're taking your time while processing. It's okay. You're going to make mistakes, and, you got to learn from those mistakes, but don't give up. You can live the life that you can live. I always say that when someone finds out that they're newly diagnosed, this is the beginning of a new journey. Like whatever you were doing before, you wipe that out, and this is the new journey, and how you choose to face it and move on with it is truly solely up to you. Like, it's really up to the person. Like, we as activists and advocates in the community dealing with HIV, we could preach the word all day long, but it's you that have to be willing to hear the word and really implement that into your life.
Yeah. And if you are having trouble, reach out to people, who work in the community, or friend who you trust. Well, I appreciate you guys being willing to have this conversation, being open about this. I know it's hard to be open about, status or anything very personal, and put it out there. So thank you so much. Any last comments?
I know that starting medication, it's in the long run, it'll be so empowering for yourself, and you deserve empowerment. So get on that.
Cool. And then last comments for you?
Take your medicine.
Thank you, medicine. Okay.
And thank you, Xander, for having us here.
Yes,
No
thank
problem.
you.
No problem. Well, yeah, like I said, Ash, I want to have this conversation, especially as part of the campaign from CDC's hashtag HIV treatment works, or HIV treatment works, but you can use hashtag HIV treatment works if you want to have conversations about this on social media. And we'll put the link up, and you can also see the other campaigns. Going to cdc.gov/act against AIDS. You'll see the other campaigns, and also watch the other videos where we talked about the other campaigns. But yeah, thank you so much for being here, and to everybody, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, everything, and share it with your friends. And again, thank you so much for being on today's video. Hey, bye-bye, everybody.
Yes, bye.
So this is the campaign, HIV Treatment Works, and or El Tratamiento del VIH es efectivo. And really, this is to empower those who been newly diagnosed or have had a hard time staying in care to getting care, because the reality is that HIV treatment does work. Here's proof, right? 15 years, 10 years, in the making, and get on treatment. This showcase people who are actually living with HIV, and they've taken a step up to talk about it and empower other people in the community. So check that out at our website. Again, cdc.gov /act against AIDS, and the campaign is HIV Treatment Works. So go check it out.